Still hooking things up.
We haven't pledged allegiance yet.
Well, 6:30 is a little tighter to get here than
Yeah,
7.
Yeah.
I get that. Sorry.
That's for you, gentlemen. You get that award for all you
Don't
do.
throw it.
No,
Don't
thank
throw
you.
it. You get like a little badge.
That would be.
I like that.
interesting. Would that go in the
It was sitting on mine.
Wait,
Judy Bullock.
how do you spell it?
Oh, that's so cool. Bring her that.
Yes, she could add that. You good?
You ready?
Okay.
Or you have to sit down because you're standing up?
Yeah.
Yes, you can stand. Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order. If everybody would rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'm not rushing everybody, but I'm letting you know that we expect Congressman George Latimer at about 7:40, so we're going to try to get through the first couple items that are scheduled before that, so we're not holding anybody over. So first is the update on the deer management program. If you want to come up, just so you're on the mic.
Hello, everybody. So, as you all know, we embarked last year on doing a deer management program in the Irvington Woods. The deer management program ran from October 1st through December 31st. The reason we're doing this deer management program is the overpopulation of deer in the Irvington Woods, in and around the Irvington Woods, has completely decimated the forest. The understory and the midstory is completely gone, and the forest doesn't have the ability to regenerate. So before we ran the deer management program this last year, we ran 2 deer density estimates. One in 2023, and that came in at 141 deer per square mile, which if you evenly spread them out on the Irvington Woods would have been about 57 deer in the Irvington Woods. It doesn't really work out that way, but that's just to give you an idea of the density that would be in the Irvington Woods. It's 259 acres. And then we ran the density program estimate again in 2024 before the program started, which is actually really good because it actually gave Irvington 2 data points pre-management, so we can get an idea of what the actual population in the area is. That came in at 133 deer per square mile, which would be 54 deer in the Irvington Woods. And those 2 numbers are within range of each other. One's a little bit lower. You know, somebody might have started walking their dog a different way or bumped deer this way or that way. That might have an impact on the way that the deer were going through a certain area. And then this year, Irvington also did a drone flyover thermal survey of the area around the Irvington Woods. And that came in at 123 deer per square mile, which is after we did the management program. So the deer management program, just sure. Any questions? Just
since the board has seen the drone survey that showed total count of 77 and 59 between Cyrus Field, of that 77, 59 between Cyrus Field and Manor Park Lane. When you talk about a higher number, it's because you're extrapolating from the number that they didn't photograph the area that you're looking at.
Yeah, so the drone flew over 400 acres, and a square mile is 640. So when you have 77 in 400, it ends up being 123 that square mile. So and both of these surveys are really interesting data points to understand what your deer density is in the area. They're both done in quite different ways. The camera trap survey runs for 28 days, and it gives you an idea of the deer movements in the area over that time period. So you get a lot of the deer flow and movement. The flyover thermal drone survey is really a snapshot of a moment in time. So, you know, all the deer might be bedded in one area, or all the deer might be over here for food. So you really don't get a complete exact idea of what the deer are doing in the region. But it does give you a lot of interesting data, which this actually did do.
I'm just wondering, is there a date? I'm just curious about time of year, maybe having an impact on like the numbers. Can we say the dates? Is that
Which dates of which?
for each of the 3?
So yeah, of course, both of the camera trap surveys are done in August. They're done over the summer. And then the drone survey, I think you did it January 15th or something like somewhere.
January 16th.
January 16th, okay. So, so the idea is to get the forest in a position where it can actually regenerate in a healthy way. You want to get the deer density down around 30 per square mile. That's the goal, is to get it in that area or keep it around that area, and you'll get actually pretty decent regeneration. That's the going understanding of it. So this year, the harvest was pretty successful. We harvested 26 deer. We had 22 females and 4 males. All 26 deer were donated. So we had roughly 1,100 pounds of meat going to the local food bank. I just wanted to give you guys an understanding of what's happening in the Irvington Woods, so people can kind of wrap their brains around what's happening. The Irvington Woods is, I don't know how many people have been in it, but it's crisscrossed with hiking trails and stuff. So the deer themselves don't really stay in the Irvington Woods during the day, but they come in at night to feed, and they feed during the night, and then what they do is they actually leave in the morning, and they're staying in areas that are more secure, where there aren't hiking trails and dog walkers, and dogs off leash really bump the deer around. So they're finding sort of security cover, not really in where all the trails are. So this year, what actually happened, and this was actually supported by all the camera data, visual observations, seeing the deer leave the property, and the drone flyover. That's one of the really great things about doing the drone flyover, is that when they did the drone flyover, there were no deer in the Irvington Woods. All the deer were off on these side places where there weren't hiking trails, but they did it at 11 o'clock in the morning. But that's sort of an interesting pattern of what's happening. So, and this year the harvest was successful. It was actually higher than I thought it was going to be, because we actually had a mass crop of acorns this year. I'm sure everybody's known acorns were everywhere, right? So Irvington Woods is full of oaks. It has a lot of white oaks, and white oaks are very sweet, and the deer really like them. And there's also a lot of red oaks. So the deer were actually staying in the Irvington Woods longer. So it actually gave more opportunities to harvest deer. And just a couple little side notes about the health of the population. Because of the overabundance of deer, there's like a lot of competition for food. And two visual observations on the deer. Earlier in the season, there were quite a few of the adult deer that you could see the ribs on, so they were definitely struggling a little bit with proper amount of food. And the very obvious visible with the bucks having small and thin antlers. So as the deer population gets unhealthily high, the competition for food, the bucks aren't actually able to grow healthy antlers, so their antlers stay relatively thin and small. So those are kind of two observations on the overall deer health. And sort of recommendations for next year to run the program at the moderate level as we did this year, and to do a browse impact study. So Irvington, you guys also did a browse impact study this August. And because of the pretty decent amount of deer that were taken out of the area, there's a good likelihood that you'll actually see some regeneration this year of some of the stuff that was being browsed down regenerate, because there were 26 deer taken out. So, any questions?
Thank you. This may be more for the Woods community, but when would you do the vegetation survey?
It's late July, early August. Depends on when some of the wildflowers or flowering plants, when they're flowering. That's the best time to do the survey.
And just for the benefit of the new members of the board, the normal season for re-up, if we're assuming we're re-upping for the moderate program, is beginning of October to the end of December.
Yeah, the management time is October 1st through December 31st. That's when the harvesting takes place. There's months of prep where we do the deer estimate beforehand, and there's lots of time, dealt with cameras and moving stuff around, but that's actually when harvesting takes place, is October 1st through December 31st. So.
Any questions? Yes.
So you had said, I remember in your presentation back when you said doing it, that only female deer have been killed, but I see 4 male deer were killed. Why were the?
No, I wouldn't have said only female deer were killed. You're primarily trying to get female deer. Female deer are because you actually get 2 buck tags. So if you can use them, you use the buck tags because you are taking a mouth out of the forest. But all deer management is primarily to get the does, because the does are the foundation for all of the increase in the population. So you're actually trying to get as many does out as possible. That's the main goal when you're focusing on it. But if you can get bucks, buck tags, you also take those. They're less productive in lowering the population. You're only taking that one deer when you take a buck. When you take a buck, you take one deer out, but when you take a doe out, you take all her offspring and her future offspring out
Right, and why did you kill the male deer? That's what I'm trying to understand.
to take those deer out of the forest, because we had tags.
Maybe I'm imagining this, but I think I recall seeing an email chain that indicated that the bucks might not have had antlers at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
So that you may have
Some of the bucks, so
misidentified it.
like you get into the granularness of this. A bunch of the bucks that were actually taken out were actually immature, so they actually count as antlerless deer because you can't tell that they're bucks because they don't have a full set of antlers yet. So they actually count as antlerless deer. But they are actually bucks, they're actually male deer. But they're deer that you would take out in any management. That's how all the New York State regulation works. So.
I mean, I guess as a next step, it makes sense for you to, if you want to put together the moderate proposal just for the board to consider.
Sure.
And if you have any comments, or the Woods Committee has any comments they want to present when they return it, including whether you think we should look in different locations, obviously still village property.
Right.
But since the drone, at least, even though it's a snapshot and it's at an odd hour in the sense that the woods were probably occupied by people, so the deer had migrated out. If that piece that's near the gun range is, a sensible spot to
That would
look
be
at,
great to have, really good.
then,
That would really be
I mean, obviously you'll make a recommendation.
Yeah, for sure. That would be great to have.
Anything else?
Was there a birth replacement calculation kind of done? If you took out 26.
No, I had not done the birth replacement calculation. Yeah. So you took out 22 does, so you'd be able to do it off of that. And the birth replacement calculation depends on the health of the herd. So for last year's fawn females will have one. Almost all of them will have one fawn. And the adult does, depending on their health and their age, will have 2 to 3 fawns per deer.
Okay. There's no more comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay, next up is the budget workshop at the theater. I know you're looking forward to this.
Well, I'm gonna start with saying congrats to the trustees for their
That's right.
fashionable win the other
Yes,
night.
that was very impressive.
We couldn't spell, but.
But we look,
But you look really
We showed what was important that day.
it was a good model.
As they said, the takeaway is it's more important to look pretty than to be smart. That was
That's the takeaway. So Jessica Aronell is here with me tonight. She's on later to be voted in as one of the co-chairs for the commission.
Thank you. for
So
doing
she
that.
came along here. I know you guys have had this now for a week. If there's particular questions you want to jump into, or how do you want to handle it?
Well, first I have to figure out if I can. open
I
it
can start by going through the cover sheet.
up. Sure.
Okay, so this page here lists any changes from last year's adopted budget. So it'll show either an increase or decrease in the numbers. So the first item we have here is the town hall theater revenues, which have a 10,000 projected increase. So last year, they were budgeted at 90,000, and that assumed a September 2024 opening at the time. And this year's, or the next year's, projected revenues is 100,000. And this is based off of 90 events for the year, which is an average of 7.5 per month.
And an event, it's separate bookings, or it could be the same event that is a play that's on 7 nights, not
Correct.
7 events?
7 nights would be 7 events.
Okay, so it's in effect occupancy.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Oh,
off.
no, that's
I just want
okay.
to understand.
All right, and then the next line is personnel services. So it's an increase of $3,099, so that's reflective of current salaries because increases are budgeted for in contingency. So at the time the budget was adopted last year, it would have been kind of like a lag of the year before and the increases in the contingency line. Part-time labor, it's an increase of $1,070, and that's also reflective of the current part-time hourly rates. Professional fees, there's a requested increase of $665, which is a 3% increase to the marketing manager's contract. And then the last expense line increase is custodial services, which amounts to $13,275. That's also based off of cleaning services for 90 events.
And Greg, so the first two, the $30.99 and the $10.70, those are covered by the fees that the people pay to rent the theater though, right?
No, not both of those. No, I'm sorry, no. One is me and one is,
Ryan.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, I misunderstood what that was.
No.
Got it. And the $13,275, that's because there were no events last year, so there was no cleaning, right?
the 13,000 is because we have a cleaning before and after every major event.
Right.
And so our current contract is 180, it costs 180 per event. So if we add all that up, we were gonna be under for next year on being able to pay the cleaners.
Does that get charged? I was gonna ask that, the cleaning, for people who rent the theater, is that a charge that they pay or not?
It's never been a charge. I mean, it's probably part of the revenue in some way, but it was never a charge, no.
Okay, so
Like
whatever
saying
they
to them,
pay.
you're paying for cleaning, yeah.
Right, so whatever they pay to rent sort of is inclusive of the cleaning.
But what they pay to rent does include the employees who are.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the expenses that stay the same for everything are those employees, the 5 employees that are working the event, and the cleaning. So that's always the same, no matter what kind of event. Our events are different, so sometimes an event may be, hey, it is a for-profit company gonna come in and pay $3,000 to come in and rent the theater, and that's what they're gonna pay. But a nonprofit's gonna get a break. And then an Irvington group, and Katie sent out that email today, an Irvington group is $1,450, which when we jumped to that, when we opened, they could not believe we jumped that much because they were paying so much less. Since I've been here the last decade, I kept trying to raise it in small increments because I noticed that you could rent the theater cheaper than you could rent the rec department. And I'm like, something's wrong with that. The theater should be costing more than the rec department. So I kept raising slowly. Being closed, we came back and really bumped our numbers up more this time.
Yeah, it's worth noting philosophically, because we could change this, and Larry and I were having this debate today, that we're making a choice, because it's a community asset, to make it cheaper for community groups to use it.
Right.
We could say, let's just only bring in outsiders and make as much money as we can, but we don't do that. So, not that you need to say that now, but if somebody feels differently about it, we can have that conversation.
And part of that is, like I said, we have a couple of arts partners or Irvington groups that pay that amount. But then like when the commission produces something, historically, the commission is always just whatever they make, it goes back into their budget, which the village has a budget line just for the commission. We decided, I guess right before we closed, that the commission was gonna start to pay $500 for every time as a rental. So 500 of their money was gonna go back into the revenue for whatever they self-produce as well. Just to make sure we saw more money going into the revenue, even if it was self-produced.
Is there a chance of getting that? No, I'm not asking you to do it now, but getting the 90 up.
So, listen, I want to get the 90 up.
Yeah.
I think we're in a place that we don't know what's going to happen being open year round. Just this past 2 weeks, I've had 4 people contact me to come in and look at the space. I showed it Saturday before our event. I showed it this morning. These are just more rentals because we have a rental page on our website. They look it up and say, hey, I want to come in and rent. More recitals, more meetings than we've ever had before. A couple of people doing meetings. So meetings would be a totally different amount. You're not using staff. You know, it's such a different thing. But at times, I know Larry and I have talked about, it's great to have somebody, if it's empty on a Tuesday, get that $500 from a meeting and then that's more revenue coming in.
Yeah.
So then I'm just having one staffer come in, open and close for them instead of like, you gotta have box office and ushers. We don't deal with all of that.
Got it.
I know I just love to understand it a little bit more because I'm new to
Yep.
working with you in the theater, just how like you do, like I understand the rentals and that makes sense. Like if there's other ways that you bring in revenue, how you like share with ticket like sales or whatever it is that you do, if you maybe could like bring that and share that at some point. Like,
Sure.
I'd be really, I'm just curious.
Because sometimes we do co-pros,
Mhm.
and so I've always, as the theater manager, I've always had the leeway to say, okay, Greg, we cannot go and pay somebody to come in. If you look at Tarrytown has these big acts. Guess how much money they're paying for those acts to come in? We do not have that as a line budget item that I can pay those acts to come in. So when we kicked off this past year and started with those comics, that cost $6,000. We got sponsors to cover that $6,000 just so we could do that and kick off. Well, then the other night when these comics came, they're like, well, usually people pay us to come into their space. I'm like, I can't pay you. They don't want to pay the $3,000. We're like, let's co-pro. We will just split the gate. And we ended up with $2,600 each. That was great. It was more money than an Irvington group coming in and renting, a little bit less than a for-profit. But to me, I'm like, that was still a win just by doing a co-pro. So there are times where I will just make that decision of, you know what, this needs to be a co-pro. And there's this fine line that you have to write of, you want everything you put up there to be as professional as can be, but then you also want to get the money and you're gonna have the rentals coming in. So with this new commission coming in, we have a lot of new people on the commission, a lot of new energy. Jess and them are excited about it. There was a whole talk already of, let's change up the website and the email blast so you know this is theater produced and then we have a presenting artist or we have a presenting speaker. So people start to get that it's not everything coming from the commission or the theater.
I'm actually really excited about the group that we have coming together. I think we're gonna be able to do some really great things in the theater. I think we're all sort of coming together as this mandate of, in this time particular, to really think about this really special thing we have in this town, which is this jewel box of the theater. And at a time when we need community and we need connection building and we need networking and we need soft places to disagree, you know, I think we're all sort of coming in and figuring out how can we create, not only to bring in the revenue, of course bring in the revenue, but also start creating more of a hub and a local home for artists. You know, how can we be showing off the incredible talent that's here? How can we bring together like these different parts of our communities and having these events? You know, the spelling bee was such a lovely thing. That wasn't the theater. But next week we're doing this fundraiser for Los Angeles. I hope you'll all come. And the bands, they all stepped up right away. Said, we'll play for free. You know, we got this major host. It's gonna be this really wonderful event. I think it's gonna be spirit building for our town. I think it's gonna be spirit building, I hope, for the people of Los Angeles. And I just feel like it's gonna take us a minute, but we really do have a plan in the next couple of years to keep building on this momentum and getting more, you know, people into our beautiful theater.
That's great.
Yeah, I want to just say, I think for a lot of people who recently moved to Irvington, they're not really familiar with the theater and events at the theater. And I've been to a couple. I was at the Spelling Bee, I was at the holiday show. And I think, you know, I feel like I realized how much I missed it. Like, I think it's super neat to be able to go to something in your own, you know, village. So I really commend you guys, because I think I mean, I feel your energy and I feel like it's gonna be amazing, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Why don't you say who the special host is?
Oh, I can now. Judy Gold is gonna host on Saturday, so we're really excited. I think it's gonna be a great show.
Great.
Mitch will be playing. Did you know this?
Come
Yes,
anyway.
playing.
Yeah. I check it already.
We're only playing 15 minutes, it's okay.
All right, I got a couple other questions.
Yes.
Assuming we build the Matheson stage, the park, do you see that as potentially cannibalizing theater productions.
I see it as we have to work well with the rec department to make sure it is not something on the same night.
Yeah.
That the village is producing. So, not to say I would not rent the theater out to one of the children's groups who has a ready-made audience the same night we do something down in the park. Absolutely, I would do that.
Yep.
But as long as the two groups are not producing something the same night.
Got it.
Do you think you need some sort of more formal communication about this?
I think Maureen and I can work
You
well
can,
with that.
okay.
Yeah.
That's been something that's been amazing the last year, the way you guys have been working together.
And with Rosemary and.
And of course, Rosemary also. But in this particular case, I would not be keeping up with it.
So this one, these couple of questions may be for you folks, but where does the cost of maintaining the new AC system and the power costs that would go to the theater go? Are those a building expense or are they allocated to the theater? How do we deal with those expenses? Budget them, is my question.
So typically, any repair, maintenance expenses associated with this building as a whole are budgeted in our 1620 town hall department. So it's not reflected on these handouts
Got it.
here.
So that, we'll see that later at a point in time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm not making you responsible for the building. I just didn't see a line for it and I didn't see an increase for any of it and I just want to know where I'm going to see it.
Right. Craig starts turning the air back off. 'Cause
Yeah, we're saving on power, that's the
Here
other.
come the
Remember those
guys.
fans we used to?
Who turned this to 65? They can't open the roof anymore.
Right.
I did have a question, like, how's the attendance been since you reopened? I know it's.
So that's a great, so I even noticed for the library, for Friday night, that used to sell out. And Sarah and I talked a lot about it beforehand, I'm like, we've been closed for 5 years, you haven't done this in 5 years. We have all these new people in the village, it is a learning experience again, and we're competing with post-pandemic way of thinking. Like some people are like, I'm gonna sit home and stream 8 hours of Netflix, why would I go see something live? So it's truly about getting people excited by what we're doing. And the commission wants to do a whole focus group on what is it that you wanna see? There's so many new people in town, what is it you're looking for that you want us to be presenting? So that's some of what we wanna do to help that very thing. We had 225 tickets sold to the comedy on Saturday night.
Oh, wow.
That's great in our brain, but when you have a 400-seat house, you're like, man, I want to get over 300 tickets sold, you know? So it's that kind of thing.
Sure.
And to your point, I know that one of the people coming onto the commission, they talk a lot about we need to be almost educating our community that it's there. You know, just what you were saying, people don't know what it is. We're trying to separate what the commission does versus what we're renting, so we're on it.
Have
You
you thought
know-
about like different ways to advertise it?
We're starting to come up with, we've taken onto our commission board, we're hoping to bring on somebody who's actually better at marketing. I think that would be really helpful, audience building marketing. Getting more creative with socials, we have a really cool social media spin out for As If, I'm really excited about it. Working with all of these film directors and.
Because that's our All Shorts Film Festival.
That will be
It's
coming up
back
in April.
And that routinely used to sell out.
Has to always sell out, yeah.
You know, the other thing is, if the rec is gonna do their recitals there again, I think that
They
will
are.
so that's gonna get people who are new, which usually go through rec with little
Yes.
kids, that'll bring them, that's how I was introduced to the
And
theater.
and they'll be happy because there'll be cool air in June and they
I
used to
know,
die
I mean,
going there. in
I
June.
do remember standing there like dying in the back. Yes.
I mean, our season would end May 31st, and then the rec department would come in the following weekend and just be melting up there.
Anybody else have anything for these guys? No? All right.
And if people have questions, like Ken, reach out to me, call
I
me.
will, absolutely.
We'll go have lunch, we'll talk, like.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Like, so
I'd
you
love to
can
learn
learn
more
more.
about what's going on. I'm very excited about the I'd love to
I
hear
really,
how it goes.
if you can be there Saturday, please come. We'd love to have a big showing for the theater and also for Los Angeles.
That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you both.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the library.
I just, one thing, we said we were gonna, in one of the last meetings, we said we were gonna allow public questions, public comment. So I don't know if that, just to let people know now.
Oh, that's a fair point. Okay, if anybody has questions for the theater, this would be a good time. Otherwise, we'll save it
Yeah.
for, and you can also email them, obviously. So, and next up's the library, same thing.
I'm going to go over some of the highlights of our past year. Christina, our assistant librarian, puts this together for us every year. We also post it on our website as an official, what would you call it?
Well, we are required by the state to give a report to the community every year about what the library did, and so we decided that the best way to do that was in this infographic form. We thought it was the easiest way to digest it, and people would be more likely to pick it up when they saw it at the library than if they just saw like something that looked like a bunch of papers stapled together.
You guys want to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because the last time I saw you, you had a mask, you had pink hair.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. I love the pink hair and
I
all.
just thought you worked at the Sprouts.
Okay, I'm Laura Lillienfield. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the library, and I've been hanging around there for about 20 years at this point.
And I'm Rosemary Gatzik. I'm the director of the library, and I've been there for 10 years.
And I'm Heather Thomas. I'm the treasurer on the board.
And
you're not doing either.
About 8 years. No, but back to for me.
It's 21. So some of our highlights over the last year was visits to the library were up 7% over 2023. The digital items borrowed through Libby was up 26%. We had an increase of 10% of children enrolled in our summer reading game, but they read 46% more minutes. So that was really impressive. We had 35% increase in new library card holders, which I think is a reflection of all the people that are moving into our village, and that's really great. And anybody who's had kids knows that our kids' programs are packed. I mean, you have to sign up for them and they literally sell out in minutes. Our museum passes continue to be popular. The Guggenheim and Storm King continue to be the most popular. Last year actually, we actually added the 9/11 Museum, which is a wonderful resource for people. And our followers on Instagram went up 7%.
Can I ask you a quick question about the museum passes? Do you guys, I think a lot of people don't know that about the museum passes. So maybe that's something to kind of try to highlight.
I do it so often.
Yeah.
We mention it all the time. It's
Yeah.
just, I think, it just, people get so much information, they don't necessarily, maybe they don't understand how it works. I mean, any adult with a card can come in and borrow one pass at a time and have it for 3 days.
It's not just the cost, like we went to the Intrepid and we were able to bypass this huge line. So, I mean, it was not even
Go
the
through
fee,
the
it
member
was the-
line, and then you also can use, if there's a discount for members in the gift shop or in the cafe, you can use it for that as well.
And the D-Day Museum was the same, because I did that and skipped the line, which is great.
Nice.
Tap it out.
And Christina did highlight, before the school holidays, she's been highlighting the museum passes because the New York Historical Society has a fabulous collection of Tiffany lighting on permanent display. Also has an exhibit about Falco, the owl, and Robert Caro, which was one of the most popular books from 2023.
Right.
So I expect, and I was in the library on Saturday and a couple of people came in to ask about passes. So we're getting the word out.
Yes.
And also Consumer Reports is continuing to get more readership.
That's true, and we have it available, not only is it available, we have our copy that we have in the library, but we also have it available online with your library card. You do have to be a resident of Irvington, though. People who are, who have Greenberg cards or Tarrytown cards and live in our school district are not able to do it. It's really specific to people who have Irvington library cards. But if you have a Irvington library card, you can look things up on Consumer Reports, anytime, day or night.
And then the other thing that we put together was all the collaborations we do with various departments in the village. And once we started listing them, it was pretty amazing. It kept snowballing how much. And we even added World Read Aloud Day, which Rosemary's been doing for a while, and today was the day.
Today was the day, yes. It
So
was
she
a lot of fun,
was-
as several of you know. Yes.
My daughter had to tell me that.
So, but if anybody has any questions about.
I mean, I will say, one of the things that we've been trying to do is trying to work with other departments, figuring that, we have things that are part of our, what we're supposed to be doing, that can benefit others. And it's kind of, both ways too. There are things maybe that they can help us with. But for the most part, we do all these things with the Historical Society. That's actually been something I've been really proud of, that we've been developing over the past 10 years. And we provided some of the images for their immigration exhibit. We have people who are familiar with both collections and knew that we had things that could help round out what they were displaying.
I was just wondering, is there a trend, you seem very vibrant, it seems like there's a lot going on. Is it trending up or down in terms of number of visits to the library? Like, I know some libraries struggle with that.
Oh, with visits in general?
Yeah, or,
We took a big hit when we were closed for the pandemic,
course.
and it took a long time for that to sort of ratchet up. We are now getting back to numbers that are sort of, when I give my monthly reports, we're sort of on mid-ish average of what they used to be. So it's definitely getting back up.
I know it's been a challenge for many libraries. As well.
Yes, yeah. We so far, so good.
Do you want to go through the expenses, or how do you?
Yeah, if you
or
want
at
to go
least-
through them, and then there may just
Yeah.
be some that might need a little explanation that I'm happy to just elaborate on.
Sure. Okay, so the first one probably requires the most explanation. So the past 2 years, we've been appropriating or using library fund balance, because I think the original plan or thought was that maybe there would be some staffing changes and that number would decrease over time, but that didn't happen as of yet. And as of May 31st, 2024, the total fund balance in the library fund was $237,962. So if you take away the $14,000 that was appropriated in the 24-25 budget, and then there was also $145,000 that was requested as part of the capital budget for library VAV controls, that leaves us with an ending fund balance of about $79,000, which is about 7% of operating expenses. So I wouldn't recommend to keep drawing down on that fund balance, which is why we have removing that surplus line there from the revenue. The next revenue line is special state aid, so that reflects a $1,000 anticipated increase in revenues. Then as far as expenses, the personnel services line, it's an increase of $10,136, which is reflective of current salaries. And longevity unused sick time is an increase of $650, and that's reflective of how long the employees have worked for the village.
Instead of retirement, we're actually having people that are now qualifying for longevity. It's kind of gone the other way. People really like to work there.
The equipment line, there's a requested increase of $1,500, and that's to purchase 2 new kiosk stations and 1 new Wi-Fi access point. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say
Well,
about
I just wanted to say,
that.
so the 2 stations that we want to add, we would like to add a computer so that people can look up books on their own and not have to go through either trying to find it on their phone or to ask a librarian to help them. Basically privacy concern. We've not had that sort of a kiosk as long as I've been there. I don't know why they were taken out before I came, but I have not been able to really put them back in. It was difficult when we were working with the library system to add new computers. Now that we have moved away from them handling our IT, we actually have a little more flexibility on how we can handle IT within the building, so it will not be as expensive to do that. And then the other access that we would like to be able to view, we have some security cameras in the building and we'd like to actually see what they see. So we would like to set that up in the back office, and that's really, you know, a matter of staff safety, that we would like to have that. And an additional Wi-Fi access point is just to improve service, and because they're not terribly expensive, so I thought that would be just a nice thing to add to make sure people have good service throughout the building, or throughout the library.
Is the number here of like the 6,262 logins to Wi-Fi, is that an increase over, like, are there more people using the Wi-Fi? Is that?
I don't know what the year before was, I'm afraid, so I don't have that number. But I do know that when I do my comparisons year to year, it's funny, some months are more, some months are less. So I sometimes wonder if it's the software too, that people using it, how accurate my reporting is.
Just as a user, I understand that there's a new app.
Yes, there is. The new app rolled out just on Friday, I guess.
Yes.
So yes.
Yeah, it was all the talk about it.
Right, yeah.
Is that in the budget anywhere here? I was trying to figure out.
That's included with our contract with other libraries, what we pay them.
Oh.
And that's just part of the consortial work that's done.
Oh, I see. Is it done as a group of libraries?
It's all the libraries in the Westchester Library System, yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Got it.
The subscriptions line, there is a requested increase of $5,000 to provide additional museum passes.
Actually, to pay for the museum passes, because currently they're funded, we pay for those with money from the Friends of the Library. But when I talked to my fellow directors, they said that many of them use operating budget money for museum passes because they have, if you think back to when DVDs were considered like the extra little thing, and then the Friends would pay for that, and at some point we realized, no, we really need to be able to have those. We can't risk the Friends having a bad fundraising year or something, meaning we can't offer these things anymore. So that museum passes have passed into that level of being, from our service perspective, a necessity, so we need to make sure that they are continually funded, so that's why we'd like to add that to our subscription line.
Because you feel it's like that's what gets people in person.
It's and because people are expecting it now. I mean, if somebody were to walk in and say, you know, do you have your pass for the travel? It's like, sorry, you know, we couldn't afford it this year. People would be unhappy.
The next line is contract with other libraries, so that's actually a decrease in expenses of $27,500. And I believe the Westchester Library System is the one who decided they weren't doing the shared internet services
No, that was the decision we made.
Okay.
Actually, I talked several other libraries. We decided that the service we were getting from the Westchester Library System was not adequate. We were very unhappy with it, and we were very unhappy. We thought there wasn't a lot of transparency when there were issues. We didn't think we were being kept in the loop enough. So several other basically, I waited a year. Dobbs Ferry went off, separated a year before, so I watched how things were going. I talked to that director fairly frequently. He was so happy, and the staff was so happy, and staff talks to staff, so my staff was like, they're all so happy. You know, we would like to have, you know, why are we so basically we looked at it, and as you'll see down the line, you'll see this 27,000. I mean, we really we're sort of that's kind of to cover some of the expenses. I mean, because when you get to the bottom line, you'll see that, you know, these increases. Well, I don't know, it's to help cover, we're trying to offset, we're using that to offset some of these increases that we're doing with the subscriptions and other things within our operating budget. We thought, again, we can improve services.
And it actually is a big savings, because we're saving $27,500 on that line, and then for the information technology line, we're increasing it by $7,000 to take on those services within the village.
Right, our IT support will now be from the same company that supplies it to the village, so we're going also with an economy of, it's the person who's working for the village too.
So basically, for the $7,000, you're getting better service than the $27,000.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little, I mean, I guess also, I mean, that $27,000 also paid for equipment, so I guess that equipment, this first year of a transition, we spent any money we would have saved, we ended up paying for the equipment, because we had to replace all the computers, and we had to replace, a server in our closet and do all these other, the Wi-Fi server and all that had to be redone. So that, but then the money we saved paid for that. So now moving forward, we will no longer have that expense, which will be nice.
Just, I always note every year about this, the library is unique because they're the only ones who pay for their own employee expenses, like the social security and stuff, that's all looped into the general budget for other village employees, correct?
Yes, so the water fund, sewer fund, and library fund, each has their benefit, and health insurance, allocations within the fund.
So that's in their budget and that's not in a lot of other organizations.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
And
important.
the other thing is, I don't know if people know that the building itself has, I don't wanna say issues, is that fair? And there's a lot of
Has
leaks
issues.
and stuff, so yeah, so they're always up against, I feel like the first third of every library board meeting I go to is about what repairs are being done because of damage from the building and everything like that, so. That's another thing that goes into their budget that doesn't go into everybody else's budget, so I point that out every year, so I'm doing my annual notification.
Can I use that as a segue to ask a question which might be related? You have a contingency account, which is, I don't know, about 2 pages later. Does it help if I give you the line number?
I have
Yeah,
the 26,000.
Yeah, what, is that because of the
So,
possible,
so a portion of that is to account for any, library staff, full-time or part-time salary increases. And then there's also,
thank you.
extra money in there for any, unforeseen repairs or anything, that kind of
Got it.
happens
Okay.
and is
Fair
unexpected.
enough.
So, other than, like the main, retirement, social security, workers' comp, health insurance, dental insurance, which, I discussed at the last budget overview. I think that's pretty much everything. Oh, there is landscaping, yes. So there's a decrease, here of 2,750 in landscaping costs. But those, costs are being transferred to DPW because they're going to, take care of those areas.
It's another area where we were thinking it would be more efficient rather than have me hire an outside contractor to do the landscaping, to have the DPW work us into their schedule.
Because it was just that one strip.
Because it's not a lot, it's just the strip along South Astor and the library garden. But, so we thought that would work. That leaves a little bit in what we had as a landscaping line in our budget, and that's because we were working with one vendor for our irrigation system, and I had not yet had a chance to really talk to the other, the group that the person that the village uses, so we're talking to them this year. I mean, this is something that if it's possible, I don't know. For some reason, they seem a little nervous about taking it on. They're just like, no, you can handle irrigation, so maybe there's something I don't know about that, in which case I'm totally happy to do it. But if maybe in the future, that's something else that may sort of roll over to someone else's control.
Oh, I do have one more thing to point out. We wound up working with Workforce Housing to share expenses related to the chiller, because we had always done it. So far, we've saved almost $4,000 by shared expenses. We pay 60% and they pay 40%. But I like to bring that up because that was one of our goals for last year, and we're working on it, and so
And I think for the benefit of the new trustees, just to understand that, I mean, the library is on the first floor of our building, but there's a management company that manages the affordable housing above us. And for shared expenses for the building, we have an arrangement usually where we pay
about a third.
it's roughly a third and 2/3. I mean, it's a different percentage, but I mean, that's is close enough for this discussion. And so, for like the, heating and, lighting for the common areas, for lighting the parking lot, things of that nature. And so what we discovered when we were reviewing our documents was that since we provide chilled water for air conditioning for some of the apartments, about half of them. And nobody has ever actually claimed any of the work that we have done for the chiller, its maintenance or repair work as a shared expense, which in the original documents it actually was. So we are now, we made sure everybody's aware of it, we're all happy with it. We worked out with the because of the square footage being covered, the library has more than that, so instead of it being us 1/3 and them 2/3, it's actually us, we're roughly 60% and they're roughly 40% of those expenses.
How does that work out in terms of, because I know that when we went on the facilities tour, there was a lot of discussion about the fact that there are people living above the library and how there can be leaks and how that creates a lot of issues at times. How does that shake out in terms of responsibility for fixing when those things happen?
Well, we have been very fortunate that those things have been covered by insurance, because they're not related to any maintenance issues it's not our fault, basically.
Right.
Anything beyond that, they have been good about if it's a small thing or whatever, about covering it.
Yeah.
So we have had a pretty good relationship with them historically.
I think you just answered it, but I got an email question from Michael Hanna at 7:23. How's the maintenance of the burning building shared with the management company? I've heard some concerns about poor maintenance of the affordable housing component.
That's not in our realm, unfortunately. That's our sphere of influence at all.
Totally different company.
It is, yeah, I hear things too, but it's really nothing we can do.
Okay. I don't have other questions. You've answered most of mine. I don't know if anybody else does.
Okay.
And it's a good time to exit stage right.
Okay.
Home
to my wig.
Couple of questions?
I got that one. Are there anybody else have questions they want to ask for the library? No? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have Charlotte, and she's got about 15 minutes if George is on time, or if he's not. Were they gonna notify you if he's on the way, or you don't know?
Is he coming in person?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes, am I right? He's coming in person.
Well, I assumed it was a Zoom.
Wait, there's a new.
His energy I don't have, and he's a decade older than I am.
Charlotte's remote.
She's good?
Hi,
Okay.
you guys hear me?
Charlotte, you ready?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can do it in 15 minutes, but
Charlotte?
yeah, you can't hear me?
Hold on, Charlotte. She's not muted, hold on.
If it's any clue, Larry, I could hear her
Yeah, no
talking.
Listen,
The only time I receive a
hear you, Marianne.
doing stuff like this happens,
Pardon?
he takes it personally.
And I can hear
And
you.
I'm the one person who doesn't need to, not that I want to, but that doesn't need to hear you.
Yeah, it's just funny from a technical point of view that we can hear each other.
I wasn't saying no, I was.
Number 18 is the approval of a audio
Yeah, I know,
visual.
yeah.
Can we jump that into the thing? Yeah.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hold on one sec, we assume Larry's coming back because he did
I
something.
assume he fixed it,
Yeah, he fixed it.
Yeah.
Um,
So I have a bit of a frog in my throat, so that's the other barrier here.
And you got about, not that you can't do more, but theoretically, George Latimer is gonna show up in about 12 minutes.
Yeah, if he's on time, great. If not, then maybe I can have a little more time or else I'll continue on the other side of him.
Larry's back, do your thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Larry knows all this. So just some of this you guys have already heard a few times. Some of it, a few of you have not heard. So I'm just going to zoom back for a second. I've been working for a couple of years on a climate action plan with a cohort. What you see here on the left is the Irvington Green website. This is the climate planning section. And in here is all the details about all the deliverables we've created, the process, it's extensive and it's all here, the data we found and all the reports I've come across that are relevant that we've drawn on, et cetera. So that's just a good reference for you guys to know. And then this actual report, which is extensive and long, and I'm not going to go through it now because we've already been through it before, but just to give you the idea, we started last year with the climate action plan, which we created in a cohort, actually 2 years ago, with other municipalities overseen by the Hudson Valley Regional Council and the county. And it's a facilitated process, which is incredibly helpful. We all are doing very similar kinds of reports, but with some nuance per municipality. So the first part was to create the greenhouse gas emissions inventory and action plan for mitigation and reductions. And the second chapter that I've been working on for the last year is the climate vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan. And that was a long process involving, all the details here, but it was like identifying what are the biggest risks, lots and lots of meetings, going through lots of reports. We met with all of the department heads. We had many stakeholder meetings with the village, lots of workshops. And we did a survey, 118 people responded, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like we got a very good sense of what are the vulnerabilities and who are the vulnerable populations, and then, what are we going to do about it? And this is, extensive lists that I took from all of that. I presented all this already, and I got the feedback that we need more actionable steps that are clear and sort of prioritized for you guys to be able to say yay or nay to. I attempted to do that. It's easier said than done. Very hard for me to put budget items next to most of these things, but I think the main takeaway for me is if you guys agree that these are priorities, then we can put them in the plan that we adopt, and then the village can know that we can either try to work it into the budget or, as Larry always does, be on the ball for grant opportunities that would meet that need. So even though a lot of these budget items are empty, the idea is if you approve that this is a priority, then we can start to figure out how we can manifest it. So there's 4 of these slides. And it's approximately 20 minutes or 15 minutes to go through. So from the near-term planning priorities, I want to be able to go through this climate vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan with the department heads with a view to making sure that they understand, what our weaknesses are, what our priorities plans are, and that they're actually working it into their budgets, that they're seeing it as, whenever an opportunity comes up that they can make an adjustment, they understand what we're working towards. So that's really helpful to engage them with our actual strategies here. And an idea that came up more recently for me, at least, you guys were already aware of it, is promoting a parking officer to becoming an enforcement code officer. That's another conversation that's going to happen elsewhere, but it solves a lot of problems for addressing gas leaf blower violations, idling, landscaping violations, things that are constantly happening. And, there's some nuance to work out, but I think it could be very effective.
Can you hold on one second?
Sorry, someone's saying something.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. So about the idling, because we did have that exchange about idling and how idling is supposed to be enforced by a Westchester County Police.
Yeah.
So I think that may be something in addition, we need to that's an item that we may need to take some action on in terms of a change in our local law.
Yes,
in order to be able.
That's a really good point. We can pass a local ordinance on that, absolutely. And actually, my current plan with Frank, Chief of Police, is to do an education blitz that a bunch of parents and myself and the police would go out and just, for like a month, we would hit up all the cars that are parked and all, waiting for school and the trucks and stuff in town. But you're absolutely right that the biggest real solution here is a local law. So something else that came up, in my reviewing all these documents is one thing that we do not have in place is a protocol to track what has occurred when there is an emergency. So if the power goes down, there's a big flood, there's a big catastrophe, we want to have some protocol in place to make sure that we're documenting, where did it flood, where did we lose power, for how long, where did communications go awry. The more we know this, the more we can adjust and plan accordingly. The next item is the CEMP, the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. It is a significant document that we will need to lean on heavily in the case of a real emergency, the kind of which we are seeing in the news all the time everywhere now. Ours was created in 2005, and it was somewhat updated in 2014. It is very out of date. It says things like, almost no chance of a pandemic. And it doesn't have things like, evacuation plan, some basic things that we need to have. Now, it needs to be updated with climate catastrophe sensibility in mind. And as it happens, I reached out to county people, and they are overseeing, they're going to begin an implementation of a county-wide CEMP that they're going to facilitate for municipalities, which is great. A cohort is so helpful for these things, right? Because we're all doing something very similar, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I assume and hope you guys will approve department heads' time for that. I think not only is it time to update the plan, but it is a fantastic exercise to have our, chief of police and fire and ambulance and everybody really steeped in what our protocol is in the nitty gritty, so that it's like, you don't have to dust off an old manual. So I think this is a great opportunity. And then similarly, there is a hazard mitigation plan, which the county created, again, as a cohort. They gave, each municipality has its own chapter in it, so they facilitate it. And they are going to update that again, starting this year, and I think they're really doing it in 2026. Again, we should be a part of that. That's very important and very helpful. And there are some things missing in there from a climate point of view, and I've been working with MJ from FEMA and other people to make sure that we have those kind of voices in the mix this time around. Isn't this changing? Here we go. So in terms of our ecosystem and asset protection priorities, our tree canopy is so important. One of the biggest things that came up from our vulnerability assessment is, so first of all, our most vulnerable population is the elderly. And one of the biggest complaints is heat. We already have a steep hill. We don't necessarily have as much shade from trees as we could have. And there's lots of things that go into that, power lines and all sorts. But it's possible that a tree canopy policy is in order. That is something that Warwick, who now runs the Tree Commission, suggested. And I would love to manifest that if you guys think that's a priority as well. And also along those lines, we want to do a large tree planting campaign. Trees are so important on so many levels, absorbing the heat, shade, ecosystem services, et cetera. We had a huge grant that we won that is potentially lost from what I understand because of Trump's executive orders cutting the Inflation Reduction Act. We might not have, but this is, you guys can, Larry knows more, but that is potentially a big loss of money for a lot of trees we were hoping to plant. So that there needs to be some clarity still with the Parks Department about what the grant is for planting trees. And also there's a grant opportunity coming up, Trees for Tribs. We should definitely apply for that. The Parks Department, I would encourage the Parks Department to apply for that, free trees. And we've done it before. Next item is planting green infrastructure along our Barney Brook, Sunnyside, and Bridge Street at the bottom, Astor Street, where we have stormwater backing up, flooding. And the more we have these deep-rooted plants, the less of that there is. That's just a really nice natural way to mitigate that. And along those lines, we have the native plant policy, which Chet Allen and I worked on for, I don't know, a year and a half or something. So hopefully that's close to, I know there's a few more steps, but it's, I believe, very close to being adopted. And then also, final point on this topic is planting a riparian buffer along the waterfront. We had an opportunity maybe recently for Matheson Park that didn't work out, but I do want us to keep looking for opportunities to plant native meadows that are long grasses that absorb the water. Otherwise, it's just more and more often that water's going to come up. It's going to wash away our beautiful waterfront parks. There's going to be erosion. It is a real vulnerability of one of our great assets. And there's a simple solution, which is to plant this, saline-friendly, natural ecosystem supporting buffer. There's a lot of merit in that. Okay, for long-term infrastructure priorities, we want to equip more buildings with a generator panel. Right now, the senior center is our cooling center, but it is also in the flood zone. So if the water comes up and the power goes down, we have nowhere to send the people. So maybe town hall is an option for the theater, or we, obviously if we move DPW, firehouse, all that could be a fantastic new facility, but that's 5 years out at least. So that's something to think about. It's a $20,000 to $30,000 panel upgrade, but maybe there's a grant for that. I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that this is one of our priorities. Okay, for extended, this is one really interesting one. The gas station itself is not generator ready. It's not generator enabled. And what do you need when the power goes down for all of your generators? You need gas. So this is one of those simple and profound resilience measures. It's actually to the point, since Sandy, gas stations are required by law to, if they do any upgrades at all, they have to also install a generator panel. But our gas station has not done that. I don't have a clue what our interrelations are with the gas station, but if there's a way that we could support them, encourage them, I would say that that could be a profound resilience measure for the village. The senior center is a shelter for power outages. It's a fantastic facility, so much to recommend. It's already generator ready. We are working on the solar installation, which is wonderful. That's in process. The next thing would be battery storage and backup. At that point, it can actually be off the grid and it can be a reliable source, full stop. That's a lot of money, but again, maybe there's a grant opportunity and maybe we want to work it into a budget at some point. Working with Metro North to raise the rail lines. I know we have very little power there. Adjust Irvington Reservoir Dam to hold greater capacity. I know that's already in process. We have interim measures, as Larry pointed out in the engineering meeting. The important thing is going to be when we create our hazard mitigation plan that the Irvington chapter mentions and just, goes through this, the reality of our dam, explains the process with our dam, and it has that approved in the plan officially so that we qualify for a FEMA grant, because a FEMA grant would be a really, really wonderful thing for our dam that would save us potentially millions of dollars. And finally, we want to relocate the DPW in the flood zone. Ideally also firehouse and ambulance, et cetera. That's all in the facilities. You know about that, it's above my pay grade. And then the final slide is really where my time is being spent. So just assume, this is just for your approval. One of the things I'm most excited about is setting up mutual aid networks per neighborhood. Historically, communities that have done the best in calamity are the ones where neighbors actually know each other. There's the basic protocol we can follow where each housing development or HOA maps out. I would work with people in each of these communities to map out, who are the vulnerable populations, who can't get down the stairs when the, power's out, who has an extra generator, who's trained and has relevant skills, et cetera, et cetera. And in this process, neighbors get to know each other, which is just always to be recommended and charming. And then you're building a network which can be used for all kinds of additional things. So for example, another one of my tasks is to self-appointed tasks is to do disaster preparedness and flood readiness, making sure people, you see these lists that are going by in California, right? Like you should have taken pictures of all of your assets and uploaded them to the cloud, et cetera, right? Lists of preparation. So I want to get that out into the community, and these networks would be a natural way to do that. Last year we had a big event. We had the River Towns Energy Expo. It was a collaboration between all the river towns with a huge amount of work from Irvington residents. It was fantastic, very successful. More than 100 people came. All of our, I can't remember how many vendors we had, 13 or so vendors said that they had highly qualified leads. It was very effective in terms of creating energy efficiency opportunities and greenhouse gas reductions. This year, we're thinking it would be amazing to use that beautiful waterfront park and senior center facility to expand, to be more family friendly and actually have some fun stuff for kids and make it, more of a festival. Which could be, it was so beautiful last time. I think people loved it so much, but there was like nothing for kids. So it was a very targeted audience. And so it would be neat to expand that. But, I have a very, very small budget. So it would require a bit of a budget. So I've thrown a number in there, but I haven't done this, that kind of scale of it before. So that's a bit of a, made up number. So another thing we'd like to do is create a welcome packet for residents to understand what all the issues are, what the resources are. So for example, we could put in, what all the committees are in the community, all the ways people could get involved civically, all the volunteer opportunities, and how they can dispose of their trash properly, and how they can do construction more sustainably, because the Green Policy Task Force is coming up with these resources all the time, putting them together, and I think most residents don't know about them. So it would be neat to have a little packet. There's a printing budget associated with that, not very big. And the next task is a budget just for other events. So you probably know we have climate talks every month. We have one coming up on Wednesday with the president of the Hudson River Riverkeeper. And these talks are fantastic. They're really very interesting. We also support other events. The Waste Committee has events. They do like super fun game workshops with the seniors and with the scouts, and they educate people on waste mitigation, and they do a really great job of it. And then we also support other village events. So we were at Rocktoberfest and Juneteenth and elsewhere trying to make events zero waste. So I'm asking for a line item there for that, all of those efforts and events. And then finally, the last point is sustainable landscaping education. As you know, the Halsey Pond Group is growing and active and doing great work. And they recently just teamed up with some of the Green Policy Task Force people to put together a plan to do sustainable landscaping education going to people's houses, which I think is super cool. And that would be part of the whole mutual aid network. Like, let's just get neighbors to help each other and do each other's gardens, and all the while we'll explain to them why, if you do it this way, you result in an algae bloom down at Halsey Pond and a giant fish die off. So we don't want to do that. We want to do this. So again, just a bit of a budget there for print materials.
Charlotte,
yeah,
thank you very much.
And that's it.
Thank you. Your timing is perfect, as is Congressman Latimer's, because he's arrived at the exact moment we needed him. So Charlotte, we can do follow-up offline if you have more things you want to talk.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, and feel better.
Yeah, thanks.
George, the microphone is yours. Appreciate it. Thanks.
I like the sound of that, Congressman.
I usually respond to, "Hey, you," so it's always nice.
Thank you for
turn around, sir, because the camera's behind
Oh, the camera's behind me. Like that? Okay.
Yeah, you can
It's
see
all right.
yourself.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Well, seeing myself is really nothing I want to do. But in any event, I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit. This is very early in my term as a congressman, but I've tried in my past responsibilities as county executive and when I represented other communities to at least come by to each of the different village, town, and city boards and councils to make the connection and to try to be helpful as we go forward. So I appreciate the few minutes here. I have with me the most essential information, which is where's the district office and what is the phone number. So if I may, Katie asked me to share that with your colleagues. I would appreciate it. We have taken the offices that were held by my two predecessors, Anita Lowy and Jamal Bowman, right in downtown White Plains, 222 Mamaroneck Avenue, Suite 312. And Ellen Hendricks, who you may know from her other responsibilities, is the district office director. And we're putting the team together. It is not in its final form yet. We've got a couple of people on board. We'll have a couple more people on board. And that office is available to reach out to for any of the localized needs that we have. I'll send you, Mr. Mayor, and you can share, and Village Administrator, you can share with your colleagues the information about my Washington office. I'm in the Longworth Building in 1507, as befits a freshman. But I've had a lot of offices in my life. I had some pretty cool offices when I was chair of the Board of Legislators and county execs. So the office I have now is very nice, and I'm happy to have it. The committees I'm on right now, I've gotten two committee assignments, which is the usual. I'm on small business and foreign affairs, which are two very different kinds of committees. The one bit of good news I think about both is those two committees tend to be bipartisan or more bipartisan than some of the other committees in the House. And my style has always been to try to work across the aisle if we can accomplish something. You know, we don't compromise principles, but you negotiate out to get to an end result that you hope will be a positive thing. On the small business committee, the first bill that I've submitted is a very small bill about small businesses, and I was able to do it with a Republican colleague from Missouri. So it shows, I hope it will be a productive attitude. I'll be in touch with the River Towns Chambers and the other ones around here to try to figure out what types of things are helpful and what we can do at the federal government level. Foreign affairs for me is a stretch committee. There's no foreign affairs component of county government or state government. So it's like I'm in college, I'm going to learn new things that I didn't learn in high school. And of course, the international scene is fraught in a number of different areas, but that is an area that I'll be working on and hopefully have a greater base of knowledge. And to the extent that individually anybody wants to talk about any of those issues, any of the hot spots in the world, hopefully I'll be able to participate in intelligent dialogue on it. We'll see how all that plays out. And I'll talk a little bit more generally, and before I complete my comments. There was an executive order last week, amongst many, that came from the president, and it put a pause on grants and programs. Now, that pause was put to the side by a court case that was filed that's going through the process of adjudication. I have no idea how it'll go through the trial, appellate, if it goes to the Supreme Court. So for right now, the pause is not in effect. But it is wise for every municipality to go through all of the different programs you have, I'm sure you've done this already, and determine which things have federal money in them that you're counting on. Right. So whatever those are, they range in each of the different communities. This is the fourth community that I've visited in the last week, and everybody's got something different. But I want to be aware of what might be paused if the pause goes back into effect, and how that would affect you. And in some cases, a pause delays resources, and in other cases, it could kill the very thing that you're trying to accomplish. It just depends. So if you have that opportunity to put those together, I'd welcome the conversation, and it can be, it can be over the phone, over Zoom. It doesn't have to be in person. Just so I'm aware of it, my team is aware of it. My schedule puts me in Washington 3 weeks a month out of 4. There's 1 week that I'm home. I just am completing that week for the month of February, for the month of January into February. Basically, what it comes down to is that the legislative session in Washington goes a lot longer than Albany. I served for 13 years as an assemblyman and senator. I represented communities on the other side of the county. And by the end of June, the state budget is done and the legislation is done, and then you're back home for half a year. Not so in Washington. You have the month of August off, and you have time around various holidays, but you're basically in Washington a lot. So it will be by Zoom and by phone call that will keep up the normal dialogue. I do intend to be home every weekend. I have duties at home, walk the dog, so I'm not going to be able to get out of all of that stuff. But suffice to say, if we do need to have an opportunity to meet, we can stop by the Irvington Farmers Market on a Sunday, and then have a cup of coffee afterwards if that makes the best. See, the shameless plug that I like to give. The biggest issues right now in Washington are coming out of the new administration and the way they're approaching issues. We are here in a nonpartisan setting, so I will be general. Obviously, I have my opinions, and I express them in the proper way, in the proper context. For our purposes here, the president is doing a lot of different things that have not been done before, and there are legitimate questions about whether he has the authority to do some of those things. But I'm getting questions now from the public that I can't answer yet until we really delve deeper into it. So to the extent that any of those decisions affect how you run the local government, we want to highlight those early on. But he's made initiatives that deal with moving away from some of the renewable energies that have been invested in before. What does that mean for electric vehicle charging stations? I don't know yet. We'll have to find out and then alert you to what those ramifications may be. DEI is part of HR outreach and so forth. He's suspending that. We'll see what that means in practical terms as we go forward. And there are other issues like that. But I just leave that as something that I couldn't report to you today on thoroughly. But as I do get a better sense of what's happening, I'll try to share that with you so that the decisions you have to make locally are, are pivoted on that knowledge. And other than that, I've appreciated the working relationship that I've had with the community, with the board. And just referencing the farmers market, I've tried to be visible in this community. I intend to continue to do that. Some of that visibility is seeing the seniors, on the other side of the tracks and doing things that, the fire inspection comes and those things to show that, the person who's representing you in Congress cares and shows up. And even if it's a symbolic thing, it's important enough to be there. But on the substantive things, I certainly want to be there and give you the best representation I can.
Thank you, Congressman. You answered my question about Irvington, but I have two others. You won't, given that you're a freshman, you won't be able to answer these questions, but I wouldn't mind if you keep them in mind.
Sure.
I have family in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and today an order went out that every field office identify everyone who investigated the January 6th crimes, not the president, but the crimes, in anticipation of eliminating their jobs. I don't think my family's subject to it, so I'm not telling you for this.
Right.
I'm telling you because I was asked by somebody in the FBI I contact my congressman, and I said, well, it happens, he's going to be in front of me tonight, so I'm telling you, that would be something to keep an eye on, because that just seems to me almost beyond, it's probably illegal, I was going to say inappropriate, but probably illegal to fire.
I think at the end of the day, that's probably, we went to court, the royal we went to court last week on the pausing of things, and I can tell you there's any number of different things that the new president has advocated for that I think is illegal. The ending of birthright citizenship, which is clearly guaranteed in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. That's an issue that we'll go to court on. How it'll be adjudicated when it gets to the point of the Supreme Court is anybody's guess. And I have to admit that the president has very solid control over the majorities in the two houses in his party. He's got the faithful support of the primary media outlet in the nation, Fox. He has the support of the people who are running the social media outlets. And he's appointed the majority of the Supreme Court. So he's got a lot of cards in his hands as we play poker around the table. I don't know how it'll turn out. But I do know that what you've described in the FBI is replicated in so many other parts of the government right now. We're watching only 2 weeks deep into the term where the intent is to disrupt and change the direction of government. For those people that want that change, they're greeting it warmly. For the people that think that that's an inappropriate change, there's great animosity and anger. And how that gets worked out is the story of this year in national government.
One more for you, and this one's entirely personal, although I can't be the only one in your district with cancer. I go to the NIH, where I participate in a research study. I don't get treated. They take pieces of me when I go down there so that they can do research and try to find a cure for the kind of cancer that I have. The funding for NIH research was cut off. I can understand that they would want to review the research that's being done, but when you cut off funding for research and the research protocol stops for 3 to 6 months while they think about whether they should fund it or not, the research becomes garbage.
Right.
And part of my deal was, and I say this tongue in cheek, I may or may not be eligible if they ever find a cure for what I have in particular, but I would at least have had the opportunity to participate if I was eligible. And if they are not going to do the research at all, then my traveling down there at my expense to Bethesda, Maryland every month or two, I'll continue to do it just because I'm hopeful that they will find a way to use what I'm contributing. But I find it remarkable that this administration cannot, and I know I'm talking to somebody who's probably like-minded, cannot understand the impact of what they did, even if it was just to sow confusion.
And this is just the latest anecdote that I've heard. I heard a number today in a number of the meetings where this decision to stop doing something while we analyze it is really an effort to stop doing the function itself.
Sure.
That's really what this is. Look, I came into office 7 years ago as county executive. I won an election where I defeated my predecessor. I campaigned on changing the direction of county government. But I did not fire everybody when I came in. In fact, I wound up keeping most of the commissioners that I inherited from my predecessor. And while I wanted to have an analysis of every single department and how it functioned, I didn't say, stop what you're doing. I did say, in 30 days, I want to see a detailed report of money and staffing and all those kinds of things so that we can make some assessments of how things were. The idea of stopping it like that presumes that you think that what they're doing isn't worthwhile. I mean, that's and I think he's been fairly clear about that. The question is what Congress can do about it. There's some things Congress can act on, but it requires majority control of the House, which currently, yes, that's true. I'm part of the minority. I'm a 71-year-old freshman in the minority, which is about as, as the least amount of influence as you have, so.
Understood. I wasn't looking for an answer.
No, but I appreciate the input, Mr. Mayor, so. I don't know if you have any other questions. This is a bit of a comic relief, maybe, I hope, in the long meeting tonight, but I do appreciate you letting me come. Yeah, that's,
We appreciate you coming, it means a lot.
Yeah.
thanks, Mitchell. I appreciate that, too.
Judy would like to know, how can we help you?
I think the first thing is to stay focused on what's happening and then express your opinion in whatever way you can. Some people do it on social media, some do it in circles of individuals and so forth. The worst that can happen will happen when people just turn off. And I've heard the analogy that when you have so much change proposed, it's like drinking water out of a fire hose. There's just so much of it that you become inured to it. And it's when we become inured to it that the worst of the things will happen. Just one example, I'm working on a speech, which I'll probably deliver on the floor this week, about the impact of tariffs and how tariffs are, someone may say, well, that's your opinion, but I think it's been proven in a wide range of people's opinions that when you impose a tariff as a nation, you do it with a strategic thought in mind to protect a specific industry against some bad actor in the world that's trying to undercut that industry. That's generally how you use a tariff now. We're not talking 1810 or something like that. And I came across a speech by Ronald Reagan, in which I intend to quote on the floor of the House of Representatives, which absolutely undermines the premise by which we have a tariff. While I'm doing that, you tell me that this is being stopped and that's being stopped and something else is happening, and that's really the challenge I have. There's so much coming at you like this. And if I want to have an intelligent response, I've got to take time. I got to read. I got to study. I don't want to get on the floor of the House and just pop off, So that's my challenge. Anything you can do in an area of expertise. If you know a lot about any particular thing I may not know about it, I welcome you dropping me a note and saying, George, let me explain this to you. And don't think that I automatically know it, because I know what I know, but I know what I don't know, and there's a lot I don't know. So I don't want to take any more of your time unnecessarily. But thank you all very much. Good luck. I hope you have a short meeting tonight. Thank you. Thank you all. Sorry I gave you my time.
Guess I can exit that way?
Yes.
Very good, thanks. Sorry for coming in the other way.
It's okay. It was very impressive. Not everybody knows how to get through there.
Well, only the police helped me. I was in the front lobby.
Oh. You didn't have to tell us that.
Shake your hand, stay strong, as we all would say. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we'll see you again. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Safe travels, George.
Okay, all the best.
Okay. All right. Back to the agenda, yeah. September mundane. Okay, announcements. We have a check over $25,000 to Pacific Trans Global Contracting for the theater, HVAC, $115,518.33. And then we have two correspondents from Peter Agavino. I think this is prompted by our discussions of fishing ban at Halsey. And he proposes using the parking enforcement officer as a code enforcement officer. And that will come up, I'm sure, in the course of the police budget, if not elsewhere. And actually it came up in Charlotte's presentation. Next is Nikki Grados, who said the fishing ban has a negative impact, that fishing is a valuable recreational activity, and we should focus on education and awareness, and also on the impact of the Ardsley Country Club on Halsey Pond, which I think we've done in the past. Am I
There
remembering
have been
correctly? There was a
studies.
study, yeah.
There-
I mean, it hasn't been updated recently,
Yeah.
but maybe it's
The fertilizer, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily related to the fishing, but it is related to the health of that pond, which I think is something over time we're gonna be looking at. Okay, public comment, anybody? Please, you gotta come to the mic and tell us who you are and tell us what you'd like.
My name's Jeffrey Chester. I live in Downeywood. I just happened to have been at the last meeting when the folks from Halsey Pond came here asking for remediation about some issues. And I do remember a gentleman who sat in the back who had a wealth of knowledge and information regarding the provenance of how the Halsey Pond was deeded to Irvington. And I know you guys are all very busy, but at some point you indicated that you were going to review this I hope I'm using the word in its correct fashion, provenance of how the deed came to the village of Irvington. So my question is, based on this gentleman's letter.
His name is Chet Kerr.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, that's
It
what
is.
Yeah.
Oh, the gentleman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have you come up with have you started to review the provenance and to resolve the issue?
That the deed is unlikely to be determinative of whether or not we can fish there. What I did was ask our Recreation Department and Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee to look at whether we should implement a ban or enforce current rules. Part of the discussion you just heard us have in various bits and pieces about the parking and expanding the role of the parking enforcement officer goes to exactly that issue. Because no matter what, if I waved my hands right now and said no fishing or fish anytime you want, you need someone who's actually going to enforce the rules or it's worthless.
Right.
So I think maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but knowing how we're going to enforce whatever rules we adopt, I think is important. And I know that that RPAC, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee, is scheduling a meeting already with a couple of the folks who came to say, we don't want fishing, so that they can talk to them about it. Now, just to go back to your question about the deed, Larry, I'm assuming, although we could always call Chet, but we have access to that if we want to just double check that there isn't something unusual. I think we had looked at the
Yeah,
language.
We have the deed,
there's a-
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, and I think you're right,
I
it's
have
not,
the deed in my files.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you,
We have an email summary too from December.
oh, okay,
From chat.
fine, of course.
I just chatted to my.
If you find it, send it to me.
Right,
So-
I mean, basically what he said was that the deed would probably not be as illuminatory as we would hope it would be in terms of determining what the purpose of granting that. And he gave us history from 1913, 1918, 1980, right, and how that land has, but he said probably wouldn't be as illuminating as we'd hope in terms of the intention of granting it.
That's too bad, because it certainly sounded like he was dropping a solution in your lap.
I agree with you there, but it's never as simple as it looks like, yeah.
I would add, since I'm standing here, I have never been to Halsey Pond, and I've lived here in Irvington for 13 years. And I'm an avid fisherman, and I go to Maine all the time. The place that I fish at, the owner of the lodge had indicated they had similar problems, people leaving garbage and debris and fishing materials all over the place. They made a phone call to the local game wardens in Maine, which are plentiful, or who are plentiful, I should say. And they spent a little bit of time there, and they started giving out tickets and citations. And word got out that if you fish illegally and don't obey the rules, you're going to get cited and maybe have your fishing license revoked on a permanent basis. people don't screw around anymore up at this particular place because they're afraid that this game warden is going to come around and cite you. If they could do it in Maine, how hard would it be to do it in Irvington? To just invest a little bit of time and let it be known, hey, you can get a citation, you can lose your ability to fish at Horsey Pond if you don't stay within the program.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that goes to you need to have the local game, we don't have game warden, we need to have the person who can do the enforcement. And we will talk about that shortly when we get to that budget piece of it. And it may very well make sense, because it's not just fishing, there may be other things that could be.
I'm not suggesting this is the total answer to the problem, but it certainly could be one piece of the solution. And it would still allow for people who want to properly enjoy the facility and the neighbors to be respectful and both ways.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm Jeff Glick. Sorry, I missed the deer presentation. The meeting was earlier than usual, and I had some work. But I wanted to thank the trustees for the deer program. I think it's been a great success, and encourage that the trustees, as they plan the budget, plan for really carrying it through now, as they monitor progress, because of the large number of deer that weren't covered by areas in the initial pilot program, which was deliberate and intentional and made sense to test it. But the large set of deer in the firing range area and around Halsey Pond and the like, because I fear that if we don't sort of wholeheartedly do the program, we might lose some of the gains. So thank you for year one, and I hope year two will be, more comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, could we just say one thing, Jeff, because you did miss this, that the deer, it's not necessarily they were getting the deer in the woods only, because the deer don't stay in the woods during the day, so they'll go to places where there's not trails. So they tend to leave the woods during the day because they're dogs and people. So they probably go to those places during the day when there's, where they're less disturbed.
I'm sorry that I missed the discussion,
no,
but
I just thought you would want to know that. So, because I think it's hard. I think the idea would be to overall reduce the population.
that's right.
They might still hang out by Halsey Pond. They might fish.
Yeah, and they won't be leaving any hooks around at least. But my understanding is that the drone didn't capture some of those adjacent areas, and so that the
Actually, it did.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it covered.
Not Halsey, but it covered the area across from the reservoir.
Well, let's put it this way, if it covered my house, which it did, it's within
It was
100
close,
yards of
yeah.
Halsey.
Yeah.
And it picked up many deer in my front, maybe 5 in my front yard. So you have to keep in mind that is a snapshot. And this is sort of Arlene's point. It was taken at 11 a.m. It's a thermal drone. And at 11 a.m., the woods are filled with people, so the deer exit stage right and go where there's no people.
Right.
That survey was more to get a count, and you can extrapolate from that count, which was in the 70s, that you probably have, what was it, 123, something like that, in a square mile. And you're looking for a lesser number than that. So the next step is, 1, do the vegetation survey that we were planning to do anyway, and 2, have the Woods Committee and the Deer Management Company, I guess Pete Kelly, come back with whatever the proposal is, and then we're gonna discuss it. So.
Yeah. The chance for additional budget, they'd be able to add additional days, I think, is what the Woods Committee will bring potentially to you.
I think you should talk to them about that, because I'm not so sure that they would agree with you.
Okay, all right, that's.
Since I spoke to them.
Okay, thank you, John.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda. Do I have a motion? For once, I'm not gonna ask a question, but does I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Usually.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, my motion.
Your motion,
Anybody want to
second.
second it? Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Volunteer appointments, this is appointment of personnel and rec and, oh no, that's still part of consent agenda? Okay, sorry.
volunteers, I think, are the
And
theater
D
commission.
11, okay, got it. Okay, yes, I'm not gonna screw up your liaison crew. Okay, thank you for the guidance. Volunteer appointments, resolve to appoint the following village board volunteer committee members. Two co-chairs, Jessica Aranella and Shana Liebman. Shauna Liebman, thank you. And with their terms expiring in 2025 and 2026 respectively. And to appoint ad hoc volunteer committee members with the term to expire December 2025. These are housing committee members, Michael Hanna and Cameron Saliani. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I think there is upcoming another theater committee appointment at the next February
Yeah,
meeting.
it's gonna be for the person replacing the person who we were about to vote on the resignation.
Got it. There you go. I assume you're gonna abstain from the next motion. Okay, resignation from the theater commission.
What would Eric do if I said, no, I have to vote yes, because he'll kill me.
All right, resolve to accept with regret the resignation of Eric Bernstein as a member of the theater commission effective January 18th, 2025. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of grant agreement with NYSERDA. This thing is endless. You want to give us the short version, which I think is, this is for the heat pumps in town hall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so first of all, this is part of $482,500 that really Charlotte and her Green Policy Task Force Committee and others that she's worked with obtained through the Clean Energy Communities Program. So it's a tremendous amount of money. We talked about it at a previous meeting. The decision that was made was to use these funds for the installation of electric heat pump in this building, specifically on the middle floor upstairs. So the theater is done, the middle floor is next. This floor will not be done because that's not quite enough money to do it. We are going to try to set the stage for infrastructure to be able to do it in this level and maybe even get to some areas, like this room, for example, but it still needs to be fully engineered. The balance of the money, this is $425,000. The balance of the money has already been received. There was no grant contract that was required, but because this exceeded, I think, $100,000 is their threshold, they required a full-blown grant contract, and that's the document that's in front of you.
Got it.
And there's no match on this one.
There's no match.
Okay. Anybody have questions about the grant agreement? I did actually read it, but it's painful. Okay. Resolve to approve a grant agreement with NYSERDA for the town hall heat pump conversion project in the amount of $425,000 and to authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's see if we can. So while I'm scrolling to find the bus contract, there appear to be two of them. So one is summer camp. It's just that we need we need enough capacity, is that the issue? 14 and 15 are both buses.
Certain trips, I think they use coach buses, and then other trips they use school
Got it.
buses, so they split it up into two different contracts.
Okay, fair enough. I'm still scrolling through this agreement.
Page 15.
If you have, if you have,
71 on the thing.
Yeah.
if you have bookmarks,
Yeah, sorry, I know, I'm here.
we have all the items
Come on, I'm gonna be
bookmarked.
retired by the time I figure that out. Okay, item 14, approval of extension of contract 2024-01 for coach bus service for the Irvington Rec and Parks summer camps. Resolved that the village administrator is authorized to extend the contract for coach bus services for the Irvington Rec and Parks summer camps, number 2024-01, with J&R Tours Limited for an additional season, June 2025 to August 2025, at the unit prices specified in their bid submitted on March 13, 2024, in the amount of $16,400. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. approval of extension of contract 2024-02 for school bus services for the Irvington Rec and Park summer camps. Resolved that the village administrator is authorized to extend the contract for school bus services for the Irvington Rec and Park summer camps 2024-02 with Academy Bus Company for an additional season, June 2025 to August 2025, at the unit prices specified in their bid submitted on February 14, 2024, in the amount of $33,575. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do you want to quickly just, I know you've explained to the board, Larry, the secret process, or maybe it's Mary Ann, just talk about these next two that are coming up, and then I can do the resolutions.
Sure. So this, and Marianne, if I say anything incorrect, just speak right up. But this process that you're going through is to evaluate whether the installation of the Harriman Road culvert is considered has any environmental impacts that are significant enough to be concerned about. So the process for doing that is to review the project itself and complete a short environmental assessment form, which is what was attached to the agenda. That environmental assessment form describes in an organized way what the project is, what things it potentially could impact, what it doesn't impact. And you, after reviewing that form, you run through part 2 of the form, which I believe is also attached, and you assess one of each of 11 items, and you assess whether those items have, that this project will have impact in those areas. I can read all of them, but they're all here. They're all here on the list.
Not necessary.
From a staff standpoint, we filled out this form the way we believe the impacts are. We've determined that, are recommending and suggesting that none of the project will have it'll have either no or small impacts on the environment in these areas that are listed. And again, this is just to put it in perspective, this is a replacement of an existing culvert. Now, it's not being replaced in exactly the same footprint, which is really what triggered this review, but it's ultimately the intention of this is to open up and alleviate flooding and allow more water to pass and not have roads blocked and transportation corridors blocked and such. So that's on the basis that we answered these questions.
Got it. All right, if there are no other questions, I'm going to read the resolution. Whereas the Harriman Road Culvert Replacement Project is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, and the Board of Trustees has determined that the project will have no negative environmental impacts. Now therefore be it resolved that a negative declaration under SEQRA will be issued. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then for the Downingwood culvert replacement, a similar process. I will read the resolution.
Subtly different, though, I will say. So it is the same process, but there's really a different reason why this is even in front of you. So in this case, the culvert that's being designed currently is being designed as a replacement in place of the one that's there. It's actually a very similar footprint. So it was our original determination that we wouldn't even go through this process, that it was simply a replacement in kind and you wouldn't need to even do this review. During the course of the design, the engineers decided that because of the proximity of the Odell Tavern, which is a structure that's eligible for listing on the National Register, they felt that, in the interest of being cautious, that we go through this review process. Now, in this case, the project as designed, our engineers are telling us there is no impact at all on that structure, but it's close enough that they felt just let's get the paperwork in place so that there's no other questions. But there will be no impact on that structure. It's close enough, but not close enough to the project to be impacted.
Okay, if there's no other questions. Whereas the Downingwood Culvert Replacement Project is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, and the Board of Trustees has determined that the project will have no negative environmental impacts. Now therefore be it resolved that a negative declaration under secret be issued. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then for my favorite, so Larry doesn't have to keep running out of the room to try to fix the audio visual in this room. Award of contract for audio visual for meeting room 2025-02. Now, just to reiterate, because you told me this is already budgeted, and in fact, it might be a little under budget.
It is, yes.
Okay, that's a risky thing for me to say, but I think my memory was right.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. Any questions from anybody?
No.
Okay.
You went too fast. I have a question regarding items 16 and 17.
Can I ask you to, in about 3 minutes, we're gonna have public comment.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Award of contract for audiovisual for meeting room 2025-02. Whereas 2 bids were received for contract 2025-02 for the audio visual for the meeting room as follows. Promotion Technology Group from Wixom, Michigan, $57,141.26. Spitali Construction Resources, Yorktown Heights, New York, $76,563.49. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bids and submitted and determined that the lowest bidder is responsive to the specifications, and resolved to award contract 2025-02 for the audio visual for the meeting room in the amount of $57,141.26 to Promotion Technology Group, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Just a quick question
Yes.
after the fact. I'm assuming, obviously, since they're,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they're in Michigan, that this is just equipment they're delivering, right?
No, they're doing the installation
They're
as well.
doing it, they're coming to do the installation.
Well, I think they'll have
Like a local-
they'll have a foreman, my understanding is, and I asked this question, as you can imagine, they'll have a foreman on site from their home office in Michigan, and they will subcontract the labor out in New York.
And
so, and then for maintenance, they have local maintenance available. So that's, yeah. That
I
was a-
assumed that it was like just the equipment and then, that the labor would be different, but okay, that's
Right,
interesting.
yeah, no, that price is everything installed, as you can
My
imagine.
question is, how do they know about it? Like, how do they look at bids for around the country?
Yeah, they probably have some sort of a reporting service when bids go out and get, because we don't just put it on our website, we put it in the village's official newspaper. And they have services that scan those. So,
Okay. All right, so reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. So, you're doing this spelling bee, or?
I can, whatever you want.
Yeah, you can,
Yes, so-
that's fine. Then I'll just throw out 2 quick things. One, this is Black History Month, and the village will be putting out an email on this, but we're gonna be lighting the clock tower accordingly. And just because you might be too modest, Saturday night concert raising money, well, actually, you can give the details on it, but.
I was actually gonna talk about it and not talk about me as.
Oh, all right, fine, then I will withdraw whatever I said. Let's start at this end.
Okay, Charlotte highlighted this, but just encouraging folks to attend the Wednesday night climate talk down at the library with Tracy Brown. DPW sent a report, they had 19 items on their report. Highlights include 2 snow removals, and lots of village partnership. As DPW has pointed out to me, they are like the go-to whenever anything needs to get done in this village.
Yes, I think we heard that in the library budget, so.
Yeah. For water department, we've had 2 water main breaks recently. Both were quickly repaired and resolved. And for the IFD, they had about 30 calls for the month of January.
I was in touch with the building department. Last 2 weeks, they've been working on their calendar of the year state report with the village budget, village projected revenue, and planning board. They shared with me they're working as far with the annual report, and we're going to meet sometime next week to like, he's gonna explain some of his budgeting, so I have a little bit of better sense of it when I get to it, actually meet with him. I had also had a chance to meet with the school superintendent, Mara Rotzik, and it was a lovely conversation, and we had a chance to understand some of her priorities, and introduce herself. I think it was my first time meeting her as a liaison. And she seems like really has a lot of vision for where she wants to go. She's very focused on a lot of academic rigor issues with the students, expanding their honors programs, and supporting her special ed students, which I think is very admirable. We also spoke a lot about, I know the Green Policy Task Force had submitted a letter, several of us on it. And so there's some priorities that have been they're working on. Some of this waste management is focused. And they're also thinking a lot about like efficiency issues, but I think the waste management is where they're starting their work. I think they also had a chance to speak with you and Larry. I think we probably had some overlap when we talked about some of the sharing of village resources and trying to find ways to work together. There's a lot of interest in working with the current department, so with CJ when he comes back. There's also, we talked also about the fire department, and she brought it up actually without me mentioning it. She was very interested in doing things where we match up. She has a lot of seniors who do internship hours, and I think it's like a mutually beneficial. I think she like some of them to learn, especially ones who want to learn like paramedic kind of skills.
Right, that and IBAC, so both.
Yeah, and so I think that was, I think seems very clearly because she brought it up, I think this seems like a keen interest that we should definitely follow. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for the seniors at the high school to like work with the village, and maybe do internship hours and find some places for them to do some work. There's other issues, I think some things that'll be a larger discussion that I think we can't resolve that are really our purview, but she's definitely had some concerns about how to stage surprise elections. Because they plan for the regular ones, but like the special elections are challenging. And obviously, we're not a board of elections, but maybe, possibly we can help find facilities to assist in the region.
The good news is there aren't too many. I mean, we got one right now.
We have one right now. Which is
Besides that,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my.
Okay, thank you.
The library, I'll start by saying that if you don't subscribe to their, I think it's bi-weekly newsletter, I suggest you do. The sheer overwhelming amount of programming that they're doing, and it's such a range because it's a lot of like interesting stuff for the kids and for the adults, and they're hosting the Irvington Green meetup, and they're also have a bunch of programs for Black History Month as well. So please look into that, and I'm just glancing at it. It's just so much. Also, the Friends of the Library held their now I guess annual again after 5 years fundraiser for the spelling bee, and the team of 3 trustees, Kent, Josie, and I represented, and we represented quite well.
I would say award-winning. I would add.
Award-winning.
Not for spelling.
Hey,
John,
don't have to bring that.
We
John also
represented
took place.
shinily.
He's shown.
Yes,
Shown bright.
and I don't think John also did not make it to the finals as well.
That is correct.
But
That was my fault.
Nor did he
My
get any
wife and son
awards.
were done.
Nor did he get any awards.
Yeah.
But
Did you get a little jar of honey? You didn't.
No.
by a local Irvington atheist.
Yeah.
Talking smack here, this is great.
Yeah.
Getting nasty
Next
here.
year, next year.
Okay, next item.
So it was, but all joking aside, it was a really successful event.
Yeah.
Our gold jackets notwithstanding, and it was a lot of people. I don't know what the number was. I thought Greg was going to mention it, but he didn't say.
Oh, I meant to ask him too.
It was-
They filled the whole first floor.
And
And
there
the
was
balcony was
upstairs,
crowded
yeah.
too. Yeah. And the other thing was really credit to the Friends for the event just ran so well,
Yeah.
and they had lots of volunteer kids and teenagers around.
Yeah.
And it just added to the community feel of the event because it was really wonderful. And they brought up they brought them up, the winners of the Main Street
Yeah, fourth and
spelling
fifth
bees,
grade.
yeah. And so it was just one of those, you had said earlier about the community event thing. It just really was, it's something special that you don't have any other village. And I don't mean to be like a homer, but it's just true. It's like, and it was a great night. So I was happy to serve with you guys, even though we didn't sound
Get
Get them next year.
And I think it's fair to say that Josie was the strong link and Kent and I not so much.
Hey, I would not admit or deny it.
I wanted to give credit to the person who was doing really well. And as for the theater, it's a good segue. As John mentioned, Saturday, February 8th at 7:30. There is a benefit for the LA Fires. It is a benefit for an organization. Let me get the name quickly. Because one of the things that was really important to me when they mentioned to me that they were going to do something, and to take a step back, I thought it was amazing that like a week after the fires, I get an email from Jessica and Shauna, the new co-chairs, saying we want to do an event for the fires. There was a Zoom call days later that had about 5 or 6 of us on. I agreed to come onto the call as a trustee and also as someone who could help out. And now, like within a couple weeks, there's going to be a concert in the theater with sound. It's going to be 4 bands, 4 local Irvington bands, all playing 15 minutes each. Comedian Judy Gold is the host, so I assume she'll do some material in between. We have I think Maddie Corman, the actress who's from Irvington, is going to say some words. I think they're having different kind of fundraisers like raffles and auctions and stuff like that. I'm not sure of the details of that. The organization is called Direct Relief, and they chose an organization that actually does work on the ground in neighborhoods that are not as served as other neighborhoods are, right? Places like Academia and things like that. So I am so impressed with how quickly they moved, how efficiently they moved, how thoughtful they were about the type of event that it would be. And last time I checked, it looked like about 150 tickets were sold, so we're off to a good base.
Oh, that's great.
But like we want to fill the place as an Irvington event as much as we do to get the money to Los Angeles. So please tell your friends and everything. I know that one of my bandmates told me at rehearsal that she lives in Irvington also, and she asked 4 of her friends about it, and none of them had heard anything about it. So whatever outreach, I've seen the signs, I get the emails, but I guess if you're not getting the emails from the theater or from the village, and you're not, looking at the signs that you see, you're not finding out. So just, spreading the word amongst your local networks about this, because in so many different ways, I think this is an important event that we should support. Literally like 3 different directions. I think it's really important. So please, and really a lot of credit to Jessica and Shauna for doing this. I cannot believe they've thrown together this event so quickly and so well. And I think it's really, for new chairs to be doing that.
That's great.
It's really impressive.
I don't have any updates, for once.
So just following up on something that Congressman Latimer brought up, we have taken a look at closely at our funding that we receive from the federal level. At this point, it looks like there's 3 programs that are affected. The first 2, the USDA forestry grant and the HUD, New York State Housing and Community Renewal Department study of the Barney Brook, those 2, which is $200,000. The first one was $112,000. Those 2 are on pause as far as we know, but we've spent no money on those, and we're also on hold as well. The third is the Drug-Free Communities Grant, the IASC, which we are in year 11 of a 10-year program, so we've rolled over the last amount that was remaining, which was about $100,000. We have a reimbursement request in for $47,000, and that's on hold. So that's the only money that we've put out that's out of our pocket that is at risk. So we'll continue to monitor that.
Can we put together, I'm assuming there's an email on that sheet, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, there isn't, but I know how to
Okay,
contact his office.
that's
So
And then they can at least flag us if they
Right.
see something happening on that.
as one of the action items at the end of the meeting, that was to inform his office of the programs that were affected for us.
I did want to say that John and I met with the housing committee, but I think there's more to come there because we're gonna meet with the full board.
Is that it?
That's it?
Okay.
All I have is next up on the budget front is next Wednesday's work session will be the budget workshop for fire, building department, and then IVAC is also gonna come present.
Great. Village attorney,
No report.
okay. Then you're on. Sorry, it took more than 3 minutes, but thank you. Unfortunately, you gotta come up just in case there's somebody listening, so.
Well, I'm still Jeffrey Chester. That hasn't changed. I think my question really is directed to Larry about items 16 and 17. about how long does this application process usually take? And after you get an answer, and I want to be positive, that it'll be a positive response, can one expect the work to start?
Right. So the two grants that were listed on there, both of those grants are in place and are at different stages of readiness. The grant to replace the Harriman Road culvert, we've bid that out to a contractor, and the contractor is, we hope, getting mobilized to start in February, weather depending. And that's to replace the culvert that crosses underneath Barney Brook, underneath, excuse me, Route 9, and then up a portion of Harriman Road. The Downingwood one, which you may have additional interest in, since I heard you live in Downingwood.
Yes.
Is further behind. The grant is in place, and we are just completing the preliminary engineering and design, and that design needs to be submitted to New York State, the New York State Department of Transportation. To give you a ballpark estimate, the Harriman Road culvert, we would expect the construction to start, as I said, very soon. The Downingwood culvert, I wouldn't expect to see any construction until sometime in 2026.
Okay, so
So
it
that's
is a
the-
bit off.
That one's further off, yes. It's a year behind, and in fact, it's a year behind because the grant was a year behind. So,
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for listening to me.
No problem.
Thank you for your grammar. Not many people know to say who instead of which when talking about a person.
He's just showing off.
Don't let the federal government mess around with schools.
Yeah.
This should be a lesson to everybody how important schools are.
All right. Motion to go to executive session regarding personnel matter and pending litigation. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.